Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Let me tell you a little bit about Agency Habitat. Agency Habitat is your one-stop shop for emerging brands. From packaging design to Shopify website development, from organic social content to connected TV spots, from brand activations to influencer programs, they offer everything your brand needs to succeed, all under one roof. Contact them at www.agencyhabitat.com. Looking to scale or launch your supplement or skincare brand? Eagle Labs Incorporated, based in Florida, offers full-service NSF-certified contract manufacturing of capsules, tablets, powders, liquids, gummies, and lotions. All of their manufacturing takes place in the USA. From R&D and formulation to packaging and fulfillment, Eagle Labs provides scalable, high-quality production that meets FDA and NSF standards. To learn more, contact Michael Law, Chief Commercial Officer at Eagle Labs at michael.law@eaglelabsinc.com, EAGLELABSINC, Michael Law, eaglelabs.com, or text him at 203-242-6417. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the latest episode of the Road to Retail podcast, where we try to help small, emerging, and challenger brands find their way as they grow their business. Hey, there's Tracy Priest. Tracy, how are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, Bruce. Really excited about today's episode. So let's jump right in and tell us who we have today.
Today we're joined by Patrick Gibbons. Patrick is president and a founding partner of the Emerson Group, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. But before we jump in, Patrick, welcome and thank you for your time this morning.
Tracy, Bruce, thank you for having me. I'm real excited to kind of have this discussion on our favorite industry, CPG and logistics, and how it plays a role. So very excited.
Great.
Awesome.
I can tell you're bubbling over with enthusiasm, but that's just the Philly guy in you. Okay, so Patrick, before we get into the nuts and bolts of logistics, which is going to be the core of our discussion, tell the folks a little bit about your background and your career path and how you landed in the seat you're in right now.
Yeah, so first job out of college was a small CPG company called Sun and Earth. They were way ahead of their time. We're talking circa 1988, 1989. And they had an all-purpose cleaning brand that competed with, general purpose spray cleaners, like fantastic. But it was green. It was called Sun and Earth, and it was made from all good stuff, coconut oil, orange oil, and things like that. And the funny thing about it was, after I left the company, Ben of Ben and Jerry's fame became the owner of the brand. So not sure if it's still around, but I got into sales on that brand. I had a company called Fleming Wholesale as my first account. and worked my way into a company called Roar, and their main product was Malox, and that's where I met Scott Emerson. So worked there for about 5 years, and our division got sold, and we started this company. And it was really an idea that Scott had where he could take what we were doing in the CPG company for a sales management group that can lend those expertise not just to one company and a specific number of brands, but we could spread that out to mid-size and small brands, a professional sales management group that was a step above a broker network. And that was the concept. And Scott and I, we really split up a lot of the non-sales management necessities that a company had, like HR, like benefits administration. And about 8 or 9 years in, we had this idea of a distribution company to make it easier for our clients to get into retailers properly through a distribution network that was a little bit more sophisticated than some of these smaller companies that they have at their disposal. And that became a small part of my job, building out an order management solution and a warehouse solution that some of these small clients that are our bread and butter could leverage. So the basic concept was, hey, if we put these smaller brands onto one vendor number, we'll have a lot of efficiencies with the retailers, and we'll be able to get around the sales objection, which has nothing to do with the merits of the proposition, of the sales objection, which is it's difficult to do business with you because you don't have your act together logistically. So that's where 10 years in, about 2003, the concept of a shared distribution network for our client base was born.
So Patrick, before we turn it over to Tracy, since some of the people might not be CPG veterans like the three of us, can you just tell people what a vendor number is and why that's important?
Yeah, so it's really the main portal pathway into a retailer, and a retailer assigns a specific vendor number to a supply partner. And in that comes all the terms of service where you interact with that retailer. It's all embedded into that vendor number. And when you receive a vendor number, you go on to kind of a schedule of ordering that a retailer drives the order cycle through. And what we found was, if we were able to put many clients onto one vendor number and explain that to the retailer, that they're going to maintain their independence as a company, but what we're trying to do is organize your order cycle so that you can receive in the most efficient way, Mr. Retailer, Mrs. Retailer, that you like to receive. And the example that we gave retailers was, in our warehouse, I have 6 or 7 partially filled trucks backing into your DCs every day. Why don't we just pretend it's one big company? You order against that, and all of those efficiency scales get opened up, and everyone benefits from it.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I want to add there, Patrick, is talk to us a little bit about how hard it really is to get set up, especially for our small emerging brand audience. A buyer would rather scratch his eyes out than set up a brand new vendor, and how hard it is. So it's a huge benefit that you guys are offering to a small emerging brand where they can come under your vendor number, because that
Tracy,
process is painful.
It's literally the seed that drove us into this market, because we were salespeople and marketing people. I'm a logistician now. My first year in logistics with Emerson, we shipped $9 million worth of product. we will ship 4 billion this year. So it is a massive enterprise we're managing. And it all started with what you said, Tracy. Retailers were telling us day in and day out, yeah, you know what? You just brought me a better proposition. It's a better product and it's a cheaper price. They tell us in business school, we're done. That's your eureka moment. But you're not, because there's so many back end responsibilities to get that product onto the shelf through that retail network, that a retailer understands the soft cost losses better than anybody. So they would rather pay a little bit more and have a product that maybe just isn't as quite as good as what you're offering, just because they know the product's going to get into their warehouse. It's going to get onto the shelf of the retailer shelf in a responsible way, so that the golden goose, their consumer, has the ability to purchase it. So we wanted to take the ferociousness of entrepreneurs and their ingenuity and take away that weakness so that they could compete just based on the merits of the brand and the proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard also from other buyers that we've interviewed is you would be shocked at how many brands don't get to the shelf because they can't get through the setup process.
Yeah, and we were hearing it day in and day out. And so we were coming in with that big company sales management capability.
Right.
And it's very difficult for a seasoned salesperson to hear no because of logistics concerns. So leave it to Scott Emerson. He said, I think we have the solution here if we can get our clients and the retailers to understand that combining this effort would be the best way to go, and everyone would benefit from that.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit and dive a little bit deeper for our small emerging brand audience today about the services that you do, offer via the Emerson Group, and specifically Emerson Healthcare.
Yeah. So really, what we do is, what I was saying earlier, we go to our client base and we say, if you haven't invested in a physical building, if you own your warehouse, it's very difficult to outsource warehousing, because what are you going to do with an empty warehouse? So,
Right.
but most companies don't own their own warehouse. So I would say 90% of our client base, this makes sense for them. And the concept is that we like to put a tagline on it as we receive one purchase order, we issue one invoice, and we collect one check. And we do that by asking our brand partners to come into our warehouse. We have a dual DC solution in Indianapolis because it's a very effective and efficient place geographically to run a supply chain out of. And the way we look at it is we have a 750,000 square foot, what we call the inbound warehouse. And that warehouse really prepares the goods. There's a lot of times that things have to be done to them. Twin packs have to be made. Sometimes goods come in and it's just the componentry. It's got to be put together. So we have a 130,000 square foot portion of that warehouse that dedicates itself to what we call VAS, value-added services. And they do everything from twin packs to display build, counter units, IRCs, you name it. And then we take those goods that need to be prepared for final shipment, get them in that condition, and we store them there. Right. Across the street is a 1 million square foot warehouse that we call our outbound facility. Right. And there is the goods that are stored, they're 30 days or less before they'll be shipped out. So we have this complementary warehouse solution that is right across a parking lot from each other. So it really works well. And our participants store their goods there. They're titled to them. We don't take title of the goods. We receive orders from retailers. with a combined purchase order. So each of our client SKUs act like a SKU in one vendor number. So we may get an order from Walmart with 450 SKUs on it in a week among 35 separate brand owners. We issue an invoice, we'll use Walmart as an example, to Walmart. Walmart sees that as one company. Their systems see it. Intellectually, the merchants understand they're separate companies.
Right.
And sales calls go on as separate companies. But they have the efficiency of ordering through one entity. Retailer wins because they don't have 15 trucks pulling up to the back of their dock, unloading partial truckloads.
Right.
Our clients win because every extra pound that goes on a load takes that cost down, and there's efficiencies that are spread across every single SKU that's on that load. But more important than the cost savings is you're going from point A to point B. When you're shipping LTL, it's going probably to 4 or 5 different stops to finally getting to the retailer. Every time you stop, there's more risk of losing product and damaging product and being late and bumping into things like flat tires and force majeure, which is things that happen to a delivery that are outside of their control, like weather and things like that. There's more opportunity for that. When you're going truckload, and we're doing about 85% of our loads are full truckload, it's going from point A to point B, a much shorter time on the road and a much easier planning cycle. And then your OTIF scores, which means on time and in full, which every retailer is hyperly focused on, your OTIF scores go up, which make your line extension sales calls with the merchant much easier, because most of these merchants start the sales call with a logistics scorecard. And if you're not doing well, they say, we don't even want to start the conversation with you until you get your act together logistically. So our client base comes in thinking the most important thing is the cost savings. That's what they think. I'll tell you, 95% of them a year in say, hey, listen, the cost savings are great, never want to give them back. But the most valuable thing to me is my relationship with the retailer has shot up through the roof because we have our act together.
Yeah,
that all begins and ends with OTIF evaluation, on time and in full.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So yeah, that's great. And we always hear on our podcast that retailers hate 2 things: a brand that doesn't sell and a brand that doesn't ship. And so you're offering that solution right up front.
I always say to our client base, when I have product ready to ship in my warehouse, this job is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
But the management of logistics happens with the reality of the CPG world. And sometimes it's not even the supplier's fault. There's sometimes where retailers find a product that's hot and they're like, hey, I know this is an unreasonable request. I need more than I thought. Get it here as fast as you can. Do the best that you can. And those are the things that upset your supply chain, that having professionals that know what they're doing, that are capable, that know how to adjust, makes you that much more important to the retailer. And then they're apt to come back to you when they're thinking outside of the box for line extensions and other things. They're like, hey, these folks really know how to get product to us. Let's listen to them.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the importance of inventory here in a moment. But Patrick, for the folks again that might not be super deep in CPG at this point in their career, can you just talk about what exactly falls under the heading of logistics? And you've talked a lot. So just some notes I had before we met this morning. Shipping, warehousing, inventory control. Do you guys insure the product when it's on the way? You talked about doing special bundles, the paperwork, bills of lading. Can you just kind of run down a bit of a laundry list and say, so if I've got a new sun care product and I'm thinking of looking for a 3PL person, partner, what are the things they're going to take care of? Just kind of tick that off.
Yeah, so let me start it off with going up to the 60,000 foot view, and I like to say these are the three pillars of support that I think about when you're thinking about a CPG logistics offering. So there's the order management portion. There is the second pillar, which is the physical movement of the goods. And the last is the financial management of the transactions. So those are your three pillars of support that are offered in a CPG supply chain service. So the order management cycle is the first pillar. And that's everything from EDI know-how, which is the electronic data transmission of the orders and the responses between the retailer, the warehouse, and the ERP system. And you have to consider a lot when you're talking about order management. There's EDI management. There's what we call manual order management. So you get orders in two different buckets. You get an EDI order or you get a manual order. EDI orders may represent 85% of your dollar volume, but probably 20% of your order volume. A manual order is probably 15 to 20% of your dollar volume, but probably 80 to 85% of your order volume, because there are a lot of small mom and pops that are not sophisticated that are very important to brands to get that extended distribution of your brand out there. So it's two completely different approaches. EDI, very sophisticated, high-end. IT is very important in that relationship, and manual orders where that human touch is very important. So we have to split that up, and we have two different forces of work within my supply chain solution that attacks both of those completely different areas, and they really take different human resource skills.
Sure.
Also, after that, you have reverse logistics. No one likes to get involved in reverse logistics. No one really likes to talk about it, but it's a real.
Oh, Tracy does. Tracy does, Patrick. He's the Grim Reaper of returns and markdowns.
We talk about the cost of failure, Patrick. No one likes to talk about that, but it's a reality, especially if your brand, unfortunately, doesn't make it with a retailer, right?
And if you're thinking about that prior to going in, you can absolutely mitigate the cost that could come, because you are going to have reverse logistics needs. There's going to be times where you have UPC replacements. And the retailer is going to say, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to drain that out? Package change. What is your plan for package change? So if you're thinking about that beforehand, there's a lot of things you can do. You can bleed your product into wholesale, where it's a lot easier to manage the shelf with wholesalers than it is when you make a dramatic change with maybe a chain drugstore, where they want to make sure that they don't have blended packaging faces on the shelf. So there's strategies that you can think about, that you should think about up front, that we're coaching, because we're involved in this day in and day out. We're coaching our client base on how best to handle that.
So folks, I'm sorry, Patrick. So folks, a lot of the stuff Patrick's saying is really important, even if you are in a business that, say, the Emerson Group doesn't handle, like, I'm making this up, ice cream. These are super important things that you should be taking note of, that when you look for a third-party logistic partner, these are ways they can help you that aren't the ones you really want to think of. Hey, can you guys help us sell stuff and get it there on time? Yeah, but there's all these other things. UPC changes. You change the graphics of your packaging. People that haven't done this before think that's like falling out of bed. It is not. No. There are a million things that can go wrong. And if you don't have a good partner, or if you haven't been in CPG for 20 years, they will go wrong. They
Yeah,
will.
and it can be exacerbated if you're not thinking about the other area that I'm about to mention, which is managing your specs and your data. You know,
Yeah.
having a relationship with the one world sources out there that is basically a global database where you can upload your specs properly, and retailers have access to that. And we have a department of people that just manage that, and the detail that goes into it, from, how does a pallet have to arrive at Publix versus how it has to arrive at Walgreens versus how it has to arrive at a Walmart. What are the barcodes that need to go on that? How high does it have to be? What color shrink wrap are you putting on it? I mean, we put different color shrink wrap on our product so that if a product comes damaged to retailer and they show a picture of it and it's in clear shrink wrap, we can say, aha, we sent that in yellow shaded shrink wrap. So the damage occurred after it left our warehouse. There's little tricks that a lot of folks don't think about, that through our years of experience, we learned that there's ways. And also, when you do that, and maybe put yellow shrink wrap on there, the retailers understand, hey, I know why they're doing this. These are a sophisticated
Right.
partner, and we may not want to be with that squeaky wheel there. So,
And some of these sources Patrick's talking about, folks, as you get bigger, your level of precision has to go up 100x. And the example would be, if you're selling something at a farmer's market and maybe 10 stores in your local market, you might be bringing those around yourself, right? But when let's stay with Patrick's Public example from earlier. Publix will say, how big is your presentation panel? You can't say about 3 inches. They want to
right.
know it's 2 inches and 2 7/8 because they are planning their shelves that specifically.
And Bruce, it's become even more intense for the retailers with the onset of their competition on direct to consumer with Amazon out there. They are really putting such a fierce emphasis on OTIF because they can't afford to have that supply chain slowed down, because they're competing against a behemoth out there that is not stopping. So if they're going to compete, they have to be fast, but they also have to pull the cost out. And by having an efficient, fast, effective supply chain, these retailers can pull costs out of their systems and compete more effectively with the direct to consumer behemoth out there that's barking at their door every day. So I know there's some cynicism out there on OTIF fines and fees, but for the most part, the cynicism being that it's a profit center, and we all hear that and saying, oh, the reason they're fining, it's a profit center. I don't see that. I see the retailers, the reason they're fining is they want it done right. And they want it done right because they want to get that product as cheaply and effectively and quickly to their consumer so they can flip that sale. And the faster that we're all flipping sales and flipping inventory, nobody wants to sit on inventory anywhere. We want to move it. That's why we don't call it a warehouse. We call it a distribution center. We want to distribute product. We don't want to warehouse it.
Yeah, because no one makes money there. So, Patrick, talk to our audience a little bit about the risk of carrying too much inventory right up front when you really don't have. You're a new emerging brand. You don't have a forecast. You don't really know. Am I going to move 3 pieces a week? Am I going to move 5 pieces a week? So, talk to us a little bit about the risk of having too much inventory.
Yeah, and it's really the rationale for the risk of having too much inventory, because I tell our client partners, that's where you want to err. You are launching a product. You believe in your product. The worst thing that you can have is a successful launch and not enough product, because right off the bat, the relationship with the retailer has been strained. So it is so important up front during a launch to have enough inventory to see it through its success that you've planned for. And that that really takes me to another area of you really have to be realistic going in. And that's where more times than not, we'll advise our clients that you want to try this with one retailer first. Really figure out how successful this is going to be. How is your CMO? Do you really want to find out if your CMO can supply against this new product with an entire retail launch across the country? Or do you want to step into this, build a model of success, get real good, firm understanding of the demand for the product from a mass consumer base, one retailer, and really blow out that model to the next retailer and the next retailer and step into this responsibly with some intelligence against real world experience. So I really, really advise any new launch, try it, build a model of success first. Let's see how you're doing with a specific retailer that you've designated that can represent the target consumer that you're after.
Yeah, that makes sense. Bruce?
Yeah, so Patrick, I think you just kind of have combined several of the other topics we were going to cover, because you just, if I'm incorrect, jump in here. So you just kind of hit on the downside of running out of inventory and cutting orders with new accounts. You blow your credibility. It's hard to figure out how you're really doing. And to Tracy's point earlier, inventory is kind of a blessing and a curse. You can't make any money if you have no inventory, but too much inventory is just money sitting there idle. So until you kind of develop a run rate of your business so you kind of know what normal is, it's better to run the risk of being heavy on inventory. I didn't know if you wanted to go a little bit deeper on the retailer exclusive launch so you can kind of do the shakedown cruise and learn, or if you think you just covered that. I wanted to give you the chance to go deeper there, because that's a good point.
Yeah, I really think we have to impress upon the audience that are thinking about launching new brands, especially to maybe an entrepreneur or a smaller company that is really new to this industry. Because out of necessity, the retailers are unforgiving. And they have to be. The competition for the consumer is so heightened out there that there's not room for any of us to trip up. And finding that retailer that you believe your shopper is going into and taking your product launch into that, it validates what you're doing with the next retailer. You're just not going in there with a guess. There are so many people with great ideas that fail. So if you're a merchant out there and you're hearing a very impassioned presentation on why this brand is going to work, it's probably going to make sense. But it's not until it gets to retail that reality hits in, and we see what the consumer actually thinks. So, Bruce, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to really impress upon the folks out there to really consider this. It's really rare that there is a brand launch that can go wide and broad. And one example where I think it can go wide and broad is when you have something that's really been successful in a direct-to-consumer market. And we know the consumer likes it. I think you have a really good position there to say, you know what? I think I've tested it pretty good and the consumer likes it.
Yeah. So folks, a couple of the things that Patrick just said that reinforce other guests we've had on the show is the importance of picking the correct initial retailer, not someone who just will give you a meeting. Buyers' jobs is to have meetings.
That's right.
But make sure it's the demographic match of the shopper of XYZ retailer and your brand is solid. Because if your initial retailer is a dud because you went to the wrong place, and Tracy and I always use the example, if you're a high-end skincare, trying to launch in Dollar General might not be the winning play for you. So think
Bruce, is
that
it
through.
okay to give an example of a company that I think did a nice job with that? It's not kind
Yeah,
of, yeah,
yeah.
I'm not promoting or anything. I'm just, they did a really nice job, and it's Dwayne the Rock Johnson. He. I don't know if you know him as a business person.
Well, he'd beat you up if you said he did a crappy job, Patrick.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know
exactly.
what? That's an area that I wouldn't as soon test. So, but he when he gets involved, he doesn't just lend his name. He's the majority owner. He's the decision maker. He owns the brand, and he's launching a men's personal care line. And what they did that I think was really smart is they looked at the controlled launch and who their consumer was, and they went out into the mass merch, Target first, and now Walmart, and learned and said, this is where we believe our consumer base is, and they were right. But there was a lot of learning that came out of it. What SKUs do they favor? What flavors? What sizes? And they're slowly applying that to the next retailer and the next retailer. And this considered smart growth is going to be the base upon which this brand skyrockets.
That's
Well,
a great example.
yeah. So Patrick, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but when we were getting ready for the show today, you made a really interesting comment that brick and mortar launches are expensive. They're expensive to get in and they're expensive to get out of.
Right.
And you kind of touched on this, and we were joking about Tracy being the Grim Reaper. Can you talk about, just at a high level, again, it comes back to testing and walking before you run and testing with the right.
Yeah.
Just
And
give
you know what?
a quick hit on expensive to get in and out of.
That's right. I'll give you a quick hit on that. And it's something I tell all of our prospective, clients that are coming in. I tell them, just remember, when you're launching a new brand, something that the retailer has top of mind every day prior to this sales call, which is 85% of new brand launches fail. So they know that as a fundamental reality as you come in to present this, that it's probably an 85% chance that it's going to fail. So the retailers have to take that liability and place it back on the owner of that brand. So when you launch and you send in that initial pipeline, the retailer is going to set up some kind of fund so that if it fails, they have a way to get back that money they paid for the inventory that's sitting, not moving in their warehouse. Mm-hmm. So that is a major expense, and you need to know that going in right away, because it sounds like you're like, wait, I gave them free goods to minimize that. But the retailer takes those free goods in lieu of slotting. So they gave you that slot. And if those goods never sell, they've never been paid for that slot. So that's why they're going to do a holdback, because they're going to make it expensive, because it actually is expensive to launch a brand, and they're not going to carry that liability. So that's one area of expense when you're going into brick and mortar. The other area is you have upfront investment for inventory, for validating your third party manufacturer, for investing in componentry and active ingredients. And when you go in to brick and mortar, that's all upfront investment, and a lot more investment than you would have if you're going direct to consumer, because your order minimums are so much lower. You do not have to pack a warehouse of different retailers, of pipeline. So that upfront investment is expensive.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're investing in a 3PL that is going to be able to get there on time and in full. All these things cost money. So retail is designed for success. Anything less than success is very expensive.
Yeah, and it's on the brand. We're going to get to some of those traits in a moment, but Tracy's got something for you first, Patrick.
Yeah, so you mentioned early on OTIF. So again, explain what that acronym is, and you talked about how that's so important with the relationship with the retailer and your success. But add anything else there. But just again, just explain to our small emerging brand audience that may not be familiar with that an acronym OTIF.
Yeah, they combine it into one word, but they're really two separate things, two separate areas of measurement. It is, are you on time? And on time for a retailer, they'll give you a window. So if you go into your window, you may be a day earlier than the window. You're fine. That window is everything. So being early is not necessarily good. You'll have a 3-day window. It could hit the first day or 2 days earlier. Now, they need that window to be hit or their supply chain's disrupted. When their supply chain is disruptive, they either fine you or mark it against your scorecard, and you get so many marks, it becomes a fine or a penalty. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not just necessarily a fine. It could be a penalty being what Publix does. They're like, we won't see you on any new product launches. That's the penalty because you're not on time. In full is you could very well be on time, but we don't have the full order. We ordered 100. We need 100. That's a mark against you. And the same thing happens. Then they combine that into one portal of measurement called the OTIF score. And if you are not reading your OTIF scores, if you are not absolutely fluent in the language of that retailer and what OTIF means to them, you could get yourself into a slippery slope, and the next thing you know, you're in a bad relationship with your retailer. So you have to be mining that data from the portals, examining it day in and day out, and adjusting and making sure that you're maximizing your scores for on time and in full.
Yeah.
Yeah. And folks, I'm sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, and if you're calling on Publix, they publish your OTIF score in the lobby of their headquarters, so everybody sees whether you're doing really good or really bad.
Yeah, yes. Publix was doing OTIF before it was cool, and yes. You know when you would, as Tracy said, people would go into the lobby and they'd go over and look to make sure they're not in the penalty box. And then Walmart has been very aggressive. And one time, to Patrick's point, we had a couple of trucks be early, and our OTIF score fell below 97, or I believe that was the target at the time for our categories. And I said to our contact, I said, "Why am I getting fined? I'm only a little early." It's like the commercial with Nick Saban, but our Airbnb starts at 3. It's 5 of. I know you're not on time.
And the requirements vary dramatically by retailer. And I'll give you a very quick example. I am regularly touring retailers' DCs. I went into an unnamed, very big retailer's DC, and it was our truck. And they when I do a tour, they try to plan one of our truck unloads. So have that as background. So our truck, it was 6 days to be unloaded at this big retailer, because it's very complex, many different clients, and they want to make sure they get it right. Walmart is so good. I followed an unload, and when I saw a case of product, as an example, coming off a full truckload of ours, and followed it. Do you want to take a guess, thinking that the last retailer I told you was 6 days, how quickly the cases on that truck were on an outbound truck to the store? Take a guess.
7 minutes.
22 minutes.
Wow. I would have never guessed that.
22 minutes. I timed it. So you can imagine you have to craft your OTIF strategy by retailer because they're doing completely different things. And the other retailer wasn't doing anything wrong. That's just their model. And it's built in. So it wasn't that they were doing anything wrong. It's just how their supply chain works. Now, Walmart does do a lot of things right. 22 minutes.
Yeah,
I was blown away. I have a video of it, guys. I'll show you later when we're off air. It's absolutely stunning.
That's unbelievable. So, Patrick, tell us a little bit about, for our small emerging brand audience, what should they be asking a potential logistics partner when they're evaluating, working with somebody?
Yeah, it's just the basics. They should be checking the references, and are they familiar with the operational requirements of retailers? I mean, just having the conversation. Are they speaking the language of these retailers? How are they managing variability and forecast? That's the most important thing to a small company, because their forecast is going to vary because it's a dynamic launch. So new information's coming. How can your 3PL partner react to that? How do they plan to scale you? Because obviously it's a new launch and you want to scale up. Technology. Are they speaking the language of today's technology? What's the ERP system that they're using? What's their WMS? So there's just a lot of the basics that they should be looking at. Where are they in the marketplace? Are they considered premium? Or are they considered, hey, you just need some warehouse space and you want to throw it into a warehouse. There's no temp control. There's no monitoring. If you're shipping bags of salt, that might be just fine. But if you're shipping beauty care and OTC, you got to think about, is this temp controlled? And if it's temp controlled, is it temp monitored?
Yeah. So folks, what Patrick's talking about there is certain products, not only do they need to be stored temp controlled, they then need to be shipped temp controlled as well. So that gets down to the kind of truck you're going to use to get it to the retailers. Patrick, one follow-up here, and this is kind of a crazy question, but I'm assuming also that if, Bruce and Tracy have a product that we're selling to a retailer that logistics firm doesn't have a relationship with, if they say something like, hey, you'll be the first people we're shipping stuff to HEB with, is that okay, or should we be horrified?
You should be horrified. Because it's absolutely frightening if you are going with a 3PL partner who is not pulling trucks into the docks of your targeted retail base.
You don't want to be the guinea pig.
You do not want to be the guinea pig. These OTIF scores are so strict and stringent that you need, I'm not talking months of experience, you need years of experience in working with the sophisticated retailers. And that's why you want to check to see if your 3PL is technologically compatible with the market that you're shipping into. Are they growth oriented? What's their financial stability?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, so Patrick, a follow-up question here, which I think is helpful because many entrepreneurs, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly, think that anyone's going to jump at the chance to work with them, and it's going to be a blessing for them. What traits do you think a logistics partner that's established is looking for when they consider taking on an emerging or smaller brand? There's some risk, but so what do you think that our emerging brands should be prepared to answer when they sit with a 3PL?
They're looking for financial stability. They want to see that there's real growth potential there. The real world aspect here is 3PLs are looking for a profit margin.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in the business of betting on the come. So you have to be prepared to understand the different levels of service and how that reflects in profit margin. There's sometimes that you're paying for a premium 3PL, and you're going to compare it to a D-level facility. And, the premium 3PL may be taking less of a profit margin, but you're getting a better service. It's going to cost you more, but you're not shipping into a rock quarry here. You are shipping into a sophisticated retail network that demands service. So you better be sure that the company you're dealing with is able to support that, and they're going to be sure, if they're one of the premium ones, that you are a scalable growth brand that can pay its bills.
Yeah, so important.
Speaking of bills.
Yes. So tell us, Patrick, how does a logistics firm get compensated?
So there's a lot of different ways that they do it. They have something they call open book. And that is, they'll just go activity based. They'll open up the book. They say, hey, look, we're going to pull a 16% margin. Then and we'll go from there. We do it with a case out the door. So we know we don't charge any inbound. We just charge a case out the door, and that assumes 4 months storage, because if you have more than 4 months storage, you should be looking for a warehouse, not a distribution center. And if the case comes in, it's eventually going to go out. So we'll get the inbound covered that way, and we make it real simple. But most retailers will do pallet in, storage fee with their margin on it. And activity based is this: are we putting forklifts in a pallet and shipping it like we did with Liquid IV, which is basically a pallet in, a pallet out business? Or are we breaking it down? Are we pulling from pick bins? Is it going on pallets that have to be upstacked with other SKUs? How much auditing is required? So it's all activity based, and they should do that in the beginning phases when you're going and meeting with these different types of 3PLs and validating that they can do what's important for you.
That's great advice. I love that.
So Patrick, what are just a couple of recommendations you might give an emerging brand to make sure they get off to a good start with their 3PL partner? One of them, I'm going to assume, because you've hit on it on a few times, is run the risk of having too much versus too little inventory. What might be the other 2 or 3 things that if this emerging brand wants to look sharp in the eyes of their logistics partner, that these kinds of things are looking good right out of the gate?
First and foremost, they have to have their spec sheet. So that's basically your price sheet with all the specs and how retailers like to see them, and it's pages and pages long. You want to make sure that you're bringing a 3PL solution to that retailer, and it's a 3PL that's focused on operational preparedness. Having a 3PL with a strong brand identity really helps. I mean, for us, we know when we go to market and we talk about our 3PL partners, they're recognizable names. That makes retailers feel good. Technological compatibility, I can't say it enough. All retailers, they want to make sure that their ASNs, they're going to come over in the way that they're used to, that the EDIs for invoices, your 810s and 820s and all those things, that your supply chain solution is ready to handle that. Part of that is a 3PL. That's where the 856s and the ASNs come in. Part of it is, how are you managing your ERP system? Because that's the system that's going to interact with retail. That's where the orders are going to come into. So you're going to be getting, the 940 purchase orders and the 945s coming back from the warehouse. but what do your 810s and your 850s look like, and how are and I'm sorry, I'm getting too much jargon. An 810 and an 850 is a type of document that the retailer uses, an electronic document that the retailer uses to communicate with the supplier so they can get their purchase orders in and receive their invoices and pay. They pay against something called an 820, which is just an electronic wire of funds.
So
all
Patrick,
of those things are important.
yeah, Patrick, would another thing be, especially with an emerging brand that's, smaller and, trying to put a good foot forward, and is it good for them, for their 3PL partner, to have a single point of contact? So the brand says, hey, Patrick, if there's a problem, call me, rather than have you like send an email to Bruce and Tracy's company, Planet Earth, and hope someone gets back to you one day.
Yeah. So are you talking about the relationship between the brand and the 3PL?
Yes.
Yes, yes. So this is how that naturally goes. I believe in the first 6 months, it's imperative that they have one point of contact. But with a good 3PL relationship, after about 6 months, that will migrate to the specialist within that organization. And that's how the brand's going to want to interact. So as they get familiarity and comfort with the 3PL, they're going to want to talk to the transportation team, not to the point of contact. They're going to want to talk to the inbound team, not to the central point of contact. But in the first 6 months, they're going to want their hand held. So I think it's imperative that they have one point of contact in the launch of this relationship for about 6 months. But I also think it's just as important that you migrate over to the areas of specialty, because it's just a broad list of capabilities within a 3PL that one point of contact in a long-term relationship is not going to cut it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen it with the breadth of the Emerson Group's client base. But man, Tracy and I've run across some brands that are pretty big, and they're still running with like 7 people. So
Yeah.
that single point of contact may be the point of contact for the first 25 or 50 million in sales.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and there's a comfort level in one point of contact, but there is a limitation in one point of contact as well. And you
Absolutely.
need to acknowledge kind of both and how you merge the best of both worlds, and that's what we try to accomplish.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, rounding third and heading home, Patrick, this has been great. So, tell us who's had the greatest influence on your career, and you can't say Bruce Montgomery.
Yeah, it's two people, and it's two pretty easy answers. My father and Scott. So my father's a funny guy. I'll do a real quick story. I was trying to get into the company where I eventually met Scott. Went against 16 people, interviewed, lost out, and I went home and I said, Dad, it came down to me and another person, and I missed it. She got the job, and the person they hired actually was better than me. So I said, I'm going to go at night. I'm going to go at night for my master's. And he said, well, why is that? And I said, well, I didn't get the job. And they said, was that because you didn't have enough education? I said, no, not enough experience. And he said, how's the master's going to get you experience? And I said, I don't know. It's another thing. Maybe that'll be better on my resume. He said, can't they give you experience? I said, yeah, but they won't hire me. He said, go offer to work for free at night when you're going to go to school. Don't go to school, go there. So I did it. I offered, and after my day job, I drove there. I worked from 4 to 8 every night. And an industry icon, Gary Downing, he saw me in my cubicle 8 months later and asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm just working here for free to get experience. And long story short, he went and paid me the 8 months back pay, which was incredible because we were flat broke during that time.
Wow.
But he hired me. So my father had this way of thinking outside the box, and it really a bridge to Scott, who if anything, he just thinks outside the box. And I've been with Scott since I was 25. I'm now 61. So we've been together for 36 years. And I've learned so much from him. And you can't keep up with the work ethic. It's not possible. But I endeavor to. I try to. And, the thing that's so unique about him is he just thinks outside the box. He's never even in the box.
Yeah, I was going to say there is no box.
No, he's not in the box.
It's like a flat table.
So
he's water that you pour on the table. You never know where it's
outside
going.
the box. So,
yeah.
So it'd be my father and Scott.
Well,
Awesome.
those are two good choices. Okay, Patrick, extraordinarily important question. Who's your favorite sports team, band, or brand, and why do you support them? You probably can't say brand because of what you do for a living, but if you have a death wish, go ahead. But let's hear about the other ones.
Death wish because I'll do brand last because I have an interesting answer to that. But
all right,
the favorite sports team, it's the Philly teams. It's hard to pick one, but if I had to die, I'd pick two. It's the Phillies and the Eagles. I love it. And we've just been rewarded for the first time in our lives in the last 5 years, 6 years, however long it's been since we won our 2 Super Bowls. So we're finally getting paid off and it's heaven. It's heaven. It's a slice of heaven. Favorite bands, I'm going to do 2 again. I can't separate them. It's the Cars and ELO. And the brand that just is fascinating.
I saw the Cars.
Love the Cars. Like, look them up. Go on Spotify. And you'll get down to about 20. I mean, it's tough to have 20 hits as a band. Think of how many bands have 20 hits that you're recognizable.
Rick Ocasek was a weird dude, man.
What's that?
I said Rick Ocasek was a weird dude, but he wrote some good tunes.
2 lead singers, Ben Orr and Rick Ocasek. That's pretty cool. And you pick one. They're both put out a lot of their hits. So,
yep.
And then we just saw Jeff Lynne about a year ago with ELO, and it was a dream come true because I started following ELO in 7th grade, circa 1978. And to be able to see them for the first time, I've seen a lot of bands. I was at Live Aid. I mean, I've seen a lot of bands, but I hadn't seen ELO. Amazing. And they didn't miss a beat. I was shocked. They didn't miss a beat.
Love it.
Literally and figuratively.
So what's the brand? You wet the whistle.
The brand that I cannot take my eyes off of, that I can't stop reading about, that I can't stop thinking about is Amazon. And I wouldn't call it favorite. I mean, it might be if you look at my credit card, it might be favorite because but I can tell you I'm fascinated by them. There's things they do that make me nuts. There's things they do that leave me in awe. And there's things that they do that we can all learn from. So they're all over the board. And it's a fascinating brand, a fascinating company. And then when you focus on all that stuff on the surface, they'll tell you, oh, by the way, we're really Amazon Web Services. Everything that you see out front, that's just a tiny thing of what we do. Our main thing is AWS, and then you're like really blown away. So it's just a fascinating company that I can't take my eyes off of.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
They've certainly changed the way the world operates from when they started sending people books back in the day.
Well, I said this, Bruce, and I'll let you in on this. We talk about revolutions in retail, and they talk about, I've said this before in panels. The big box retailers were a revolution. No, they weren't. The club stores were a revolution. No, they weren't. The last revolution prior to this was the supermarket. That changed the way mom shopped. That changed it. They were going to butchers. They were going to dry goods stores. They were going to bakeries, and that changed it. That was a revolution. Direct to consumer has been the next revolution. Yeah, and this is a revolution, and it's impacting everything. Brick and mortar has changed completely
because of Amazon.
And they're joining it. They're not whining. They're moving. They're competing. So this revolution's fascinating, and it was driven by Amazon.
Yeah. So your Amazon comment, I read a interview years ago with Jeff Bezos, and the name of his company came down to two.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you know the other one?
Yeah, the everything store.
Well, no. The two that he was going to name is Amazon or the Relentless Company, and he still owns that URL. Relentless.
Oh, I didn't know. I read in his biography that he was thinking of the everything store, and somehow he got convinced out of it and was agreeing. And the thing that got him there was the arrow that goes from A to Z, and he thinks that indicates everything anyway. So that arrow underneath the A and it points to the Z in Amazon connotes everything from A to Z.
Huh. Yeah. All right, Patrick. So this has been fantastic. How can people reach out to you or learn more about the Emerson Group?
Yeah. So, you can always go to our website. They're very simple, theemersongroup.com. My email address is real simple. I'd love to hear from anybody who has any questions or just wants to give me some comments on today's podcast. It's patrick.gibbons, Gibbon as in Nancy, S, at emersongroup.com.
All right, Patrick. Thank you so much for your time. All right, Tracy, the big finish.
Absolutely. So thank you, Patrick. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed our conversation today. And audience, thanks for joining us. Continue to follow us on our Spotify and Apple channels where you find your podcasts. We also put those links into our show notes. So look for that when this episode and all our episodes post, which is every Tuesday. And also check us out on our website, which is www.road2retail.com. And you will find all of our episodes there as well. So thanks you,
everybody.
And we really appreciate it.
Good luck out there, folks.
Thank you.